Welcome you to another installment of the Women of International Law Issues. And today we have here Marike Paulsson, Vice President for North America of the Global Legal Institute for Peace of the University of São Paulo, the Secretary General for the Council for International Dispute Resolution of the Kingdom of Bahrain, a visiting professor at a number of universities, and I could go on and on and on. And we are very happy to have you here, very honored. And by tradition, first of all, we ask our guests to tell about themselves, the early years, where they were born, about their education, so on and so forth.
Thank you so much. Spasiba большое. I'm starting to learn Russian. So the very early years has been a long time ago since anybody asked about where I was born. I was born in the Netherlands in a place called Meppel, which even most Dutch people don't know. It's the Dutch countryside and also kind of referred to as the Bible Belt. And so that might give you the impression that I'm incredibly Dutch sort of bred, which is not the case. My father was of Indian origin by way of South America and met my Dutch mother, and they decided to get married, and they had been married for 50 years. And so my brother and I grew up in a very interesting home. And from that countryside, I found my way to Leiden University, which I'm sure you're familiar with, to study law. And from there, I went to Paris to study political science at Sciences Po and returned to the Netherlands briefly, really, 2 years or so, 2 or 3 years, to practice not at a Dutch firm, but at what was then called a magic circle firm from London, Freshfields, Brookhouse Deringer, in the International Arbitration and Litigation Practice Group. From there, I think after 2 years, I moved to Brussels to work for Albert-Jan van den Berg, who was a leading arbitrator at the time, still a leading arbitrator, and counsel in cross-border litigation, a professor. That's how kind of the life in international arbitration began.
And what exactly attracted you to international arbitration? How did you choose this path, this career?
Nothing attracted me to international arbitration. I love that today I'm also a professor, so I teach in various places around the world. I mostly teach those who aspire to become specialists in international arbitration. And what I find fascinating is that they are very young and they say, I want to be an arbitrator, I want to be an investor state. And I'm thinking, why? I'm going to say something and it's very cliche, but Jay Shetty, who does a lot of podcasts, he's I think the guru of podcasts, who was I think at Deloitte and then decided to become a monk. I don't know if you know his story. And now he's very famous. He's in the United States. He's built this whole empire around living your life on purpose. And he told his story, which is, child of an Indian father, I had 2 choices, law school or med school. And so I think he chose law school. He went for a third. He chose economics. And then at some point decided it wasn't him. He went to India to become a monk. And then he went back into the normal world to teach what he had learned. And now he turned that into a podcast empire. So I'm the daughter of an Indian father who said the same, it's law school or med school. And my problem was that I had been in the performing arts since I was 9, very intensively in theater and dance and singing. And I was very dedicated. I knew exactly which art school I wanted to go to. And he said, it's going to be law school or med school. So my mother, who was very Dutch and liberal, said, go to law school, it's theater, it just pays better. And so that's what happened. And I wanted to do Supreme Court work, but the headhunters were helping me find the law firms, and I did interviews with Clifford Chance and Freshfields. I did not choose Freshfields because of arbitration. I liked the people. And then I ended up in this practice group. I had no idea what arbitration was. Somebody then said to me, Melanie, my mentor, who I'm in touch with, read this book of Albert-Jan van den Berg. It's about this thing called the New York Convention. And now that was 2003. And fast forward 2016, I published my book on the New York Convention. And I've been here this entire week to talk about the New York Convention. So I did not choose arbitration. I guess it chose me. So my advice to younger people would be, don't plan everything. Don't tell yourself one day has to be my future, because you never know what life throws at you. And you never really know at a young age what you like. And you have to be a bit open-minded and flexible and trust the universe a little bit.
This is very interesting. Actually, you mentioned Melanie, your mentor. Could you tell us more? Maybe there were some other interesting people who used to help you in your studies, in your career. Maybe there are people who you see as mentor now, although you are yourself a mentor now.
Yeah, well, mentorship is very interesting. One person whom I call the magic mentor, so the mentor of all mentors, is Martin Hunter, who is really one of the gurus in international arbitration. He passed away a couple of years ago. So he was at the origins of the Freshfields Arbitration Practice Group, published some of the most famous books in international arbitration, and was a very, very dear friend. And most senior arbitration specialists really end the last 2-3 decades doing arbitrator work. Martin spent the last, I would say, 15 years of his life, or 20, he passed away in his 80s, mentoring. He mentored in India, he mentored in Miami, he mentored in Sao Paulo with such dedication and love. And so he's an example. What I did back in 2008, I set up Young ICA with the organization called ICA, International Council for Commercial Arbitration. And Young ICA, our pillar was mentorship. So we created a worldwide mentoring program that brings the most famous arbitrators from around the world together as mentors. Then we would have sort of younger partners in their 40s who would be the buddies, and we would team them with very young people, students, first-year associates. And we launched it in 2010, and now, 2025, this group has 17,000 members. So it's a worldwide mentoring program. I'm not proud of it because I don't think it was because of what I did. We started it in 2008, but it's really the other co-chairs over the years who took it with so much love and passion and who expanded it to a group of 17,000 members. So I'm not proud, but very, very grateful. My mentors, the first one is my father. I am everything that I am because of him. And then just blessed with so many people. It happens organically. And that's another thing I would say is young people want to pick their mentor and you have to be my mentor. And it just doesn't work that way. It has to click with energy. And so Melanie van Leeuwen, who was at that time a senior associate at Freshfields, definitely took me under her wings, and I needed that very much. I still do. I was on the phone with her last week, and I hadn't spoken to her for a long time, and we just picked up where we left it, and still she guides me. She knows me very, very well and understands what I need, sometimes a whip and a red pen. I really relied on her. And then, of course, Albert-Jan van den Berg, who just opened doors for me and who created opportunities and who let me fly and let me be a bit crazy and said, okay, you do your thing. So he gave me that space. But he also taught just by example of how he would operate as an arbitrator, professor, and counsel. And I think Albert-Jan and Melanie are the ones I really depended on. I kind of still do. Those I would call mentors. And then there are those who inspire. Those you not look up to, but you look at them and you think, wow, maybe one day. And so there's Carolyn Lamb, who is one of the leading arbitration specialists. She's with White & Case. Force of nature, beautiful woman who was a partner at White & Case, who was an arbitrator, who seemed to not ever sleep, who just is so fierce. And you see that and you think, okay, it's possible. So I really, really admire her. Another person I greatly admired and met also, and have met a couple of times, was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Inspiring for women around the world, inspiring for judges. I've met many female judges who have inspired me. And then the last point, apart from having a mentor or those who inspire, is really your sisterhood. And so they're not your mentors because they're your peers. They're not your idols because they're your peers. But I would not have survived without them. I think I've been in this field for 25 years. And it's going to be very emotional talk today. There have been a lot of moments where I wanted to quit. And because it gets tough. for me, it got very tough because I grew up in the Netherlands, but biracial. So I did endure prejudice. And I think when I started operating in the world of international law, although not as difficult as it was for people like Carolyn, it was still very male-dominated. So Freshfields at the time had no female partners. And so as a woman, there are certain countries where there's just more sexism, like in the United States, for example. That was the second part that made it hard. The third part that made it harder is I had a background also in dance and some modeling, and there were quite awful things sometimes that were said about me. And you have to learn how to develop the tools to deal with that. The fourth challenging element is that I became a mother. And the fifth difficult thing was, and a lot of people have discussed that with me, is who my husband is. They said, forever, sometimes that will come back at you, that you're the wife of. And I think a lot of women in international disputes have moments that it gets really hard. And I've seen a lot of women who actually do quit because it's physically, it's a lot, all the traveling, the hearings, the all-nighters, and then you have children and you have young children. That already applies to most women. Then I had all these added layers, and there have been quite a few moments that I wanted to quit, and I thought I'm just going to do something else. There have been moments, I remember it vividly, it was 2015, I think 2020, that I wanted to just go back to the performing arts and the arts and say, this is where I come from, this is where I belong, this way I'm in my own world. That is the world that is actually much more forgiving on people like me, because there are more people like me in that space. And it was my friends, my girlfriends, my sisters who kept me in. It was really them always supporting me. And I have my sisters in the United States and in Europe and in Latin America, in Bahrain. And when it really gets tough, they are there for me. And things can get really tough. And I have a sisterhood. I would say there are 4, one in Amsterdam, 2 in Bahrain, and 1 in Miami. And I'm pretty much in touch with them every single day. Every single day. And I don't think I would be here without them. So one I was in touch with over Snapchat this morning. The other one sent me messages over Signal. Yet another one sent me messages over Instagram. And the other one was WhatsApp. And so we're sort of with each other every single day, no matter how far away we are from each other. And when I got this particular new job in the summer of 2023, you will know that women often say, there are the following 10 reasons why I'm not competent for this job. There are the following 10 reasons why I should not take this job. There are the following 10 reasons why I won't survive in this job. And I had 2 friends in particular, one in Bahrain and one in Miami. And with one of them, the one from Miami, Aryan, I was in Paris with her the week that this all came about. And we spent hours walking by the Seine and the Louvre. And she said, Marike, you got this. It's going to be hard, but you got this. And so I would not be sitting here right now were it not for all my sisters.
Indeed, sisterhood is beautiful, and thank you for telling about it so sincerely and beautifully. But I also know that it hasn't always been the brightest, side. I remember you said in 2019 on your
The TED Talk.
Yeah, TED Talk.
The TED Talk. Yeah.
Yes, you. Yes, it was 2019.
She for she.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
for she.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you noticed that the rules were different for women in academia, in law, etc., and how much it hurt that the criticism, the judgment came from fellow women.
Yeah.
Of course, there are tons of literature written about this topic, internalized misogyny and so on and so forth. But in your opinion, what could we do to foster sisterhood in general and in legal community in particular?
I'm so happy you asked that question. That TED Talk really came from the heart, and I'm very happy I gave the talk, because at that point I was working for Madeleine Albright, who was Secretary of State, who was with the Clinton administration, And then she started her commercial diplomacy firm. And at some point during some elections, she said, there's a special place in hell for women who don't support each other. And in my TED Talk, I tried to change that by saying, let's just not approach this from a negative way. Let's say there's a special place in heaven for the sisterhood. And just to start off with what she referred to, what you're referring to, and what I refer to is already was at the time, I think we are doing so much better now, there was a lot of inequality, a lot of sexism, not the same opportunities, a male-dominated world, patriarchy, international law and international disputes dominated by men over a certain age from a certain part of the world. And so it was already hard enough for women as it is. I've had moments in my career, what I tend to say is you don't see the scars under this dress from all the backstabbing from women. And awful things have happened. I remember in Miami, there was one whom I in fact hired, a woman who, I don't know whether she felt threatened, whether she thought it's her or me, but she just engaged in a campaign. And she would go behind my back to the dean, and I had a lot of friends on campus, so they would tell me, say, Marike, she's doing this, she's doing that, and I thought, I don't want to engage. I'm not going to engage. So I chose not to fight her, and that actually did backfire because she was quite successful with her campaign. It was hurtful and it was effective. And so what do you do as a woman when you're being attacked by another woman? Are you going to fight, or are you going to say karma will just sort it all out? My philosophy is karma will sort it all out, because ultimately I did leave, but then the dean left, and for other reasons, a lot of people left. But ironically, they then realized, okay, Marike did the following with the institute. I still am in touch with all those people. I'm still a professor there. And this person lost quite a lot of allies because, of course, I was not the only one on the receiving end of this. One thing I actually want to point out about this story, and I will share a second story with you, is what I now realize is when women in a way viciously attack other women, it's not because they're bad, and it's not because they're mean and vicious and evil and bad faith. It's because they struggle with their things, maybe insecurity, or having young children, not knowing how to navigate it at home. Maybe even it wasn't intentional. Maybe she never realized that she did this. At one point I invited her for lunch, and I said, listen, I guess I have to apologize because somehow you felt that you had to do the following things, and I really want to work with you, and I hope we can do things together. And she was completely shocked. And then she was very kind. So then I thought maybe she felt intimidated. I've been in touch with her since. And so sometimes I think nobody is bad. We do things because we struggle, or we're insecure, or we're not having a good day, or we feel we have to fight, or we've been taught that we have to fight. So I do think we have to be very forgiving. The second thing that happened to me, which was quite worse, is also somebody who worked at the law school whose contract came to an end. And for some reason, she blamed that entirely on me, whereas it was the dean who wanted to say, we're just not going to renew the contract because this person was supposed to retire. And I was at the receiving end of some vicious remarks and attacks, and this person had a meeting with the dean and said, she's nothing but a pretty face, and her only title that she has is MRS, Mrs., the wife of the very powerful man. So the two attacks were, one, she only is in this world because of her husband, and two, she's pretty. And I remember the dean said to me, well, at least you're pretty. And so what I did is the following, three things. I found an artwork that said MRS. It's in my office now. So I thought, let me just own it. The second thing is I kept on reaching out to her in peace. And I thought, my philosophy is I'm going to be kind. And after many, many years, she sent me an email about my family, about her family, and in a way it was an apology. And I realized there were probably things going on her end, and I don't know if it had anything to do with me. And so I was very happy that I always continued to reach out to her. And the third thing that happened is I met Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she wrote letters to me addressing me as professor, very respectful. She wrote a letter saying, "Thank you so much for your book." I gave her earrings from India, and then she returned publications to me. So I framed that letter from Ruth Bader Ginsburg that starts with, "Dear Professor, da-da-da-da-da, best, Ruth." And I put it next to the frame of Mrs., thinking, you can try to put me down, that I'm only the wife of, but I have sort of the most notorious female judge in the world who addresses me with Professor. And so these things happen, and they will always happen. 2 lessons learned. One is never do that, never attack women, never, ever, ever attack women. Now, if you're our opposing counsel, or if a woman happens to be something that is fraudulent, of course you have to act, but that has nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman. So never, never attack another woman. And second, always respond with love, because it will come back. And so that's my TED Talk, that instead of focusing on how we attack each other, we need to build a sisterhood. So what I started doing over 25 years is I have my group of friends, and they will see this podcast. And so, of course, it's Arjen. She will be very upset if I don't say her name first. And Aisha will be now very upset that I said Arjen's names first. So I'm sorry. But then there are my girlfriends in Latin America. It's Eleonora and her gang, whom I love to pieces. There are the women that I've met here, so Julia and Valeria. But I think especially the shout-outs I get from Aisha and Arjen and Eleonora, and how we find each other at all these conferences. There is Chan and Sapna from Asia, Kate from Mexico. I love them so much, and they always support me. So let's share a positive story. When we were based in Washington and my son was very young, I was really just struggling. Work was brutal. He was very young, and he had to have a lot of therapy. Of course, my husband traveled enormously because of who he was, and I had to go to Miami to speak at a conference. I was going to be gone for 3 days, but he also had to travel, and in Washington it was very hard to get help. So you would only have help for the day. And so I needed to find a way for somebody to stay over, but then at the last minute he had to have a doctor's checkup, and I had to speak at this conference. And so somebody had said, okay, I'll take him. And I'm flying to Miami, I'm in the audience, I'm about to go on the podium, and I get a message. What happened is that the person who was supposed to take him to the doctor did not have time and outsourced it to an assistant without checking with me. And things went bad at this doctor's visit, and my son was very upset, and this young assistant was upset that she had to do this, and it all turned into a big drama. And I was in the ladies, and I was very, very upset. And it was Kate from Mexico who came up to me and said, "Marike, what's going on?" And I showed her the messages, and she said, "Oh my God, this is terrible." I said, "Marike, just breathe. You got this. You go do your speech, and then you're going to go handle this." And she just calmed me down. She supported me, and I went on to the podium to do my speech. I needed that in that moment. And so those women are really out there, and you just need to find them. Yeah, that's my advice.
Thank you very much for this advice. It was very interesting listening to what you spoke so wholeheartedly about your female friends, and you being a bigger person, a greater person in conflicts.
Well, sometimes. If you then ask others, I'm not. If you ask certain men, they will laugh right now, but yeah.
Yes, you are well known for empowering women. Worldwide, you are a member of the jury for the Women's Empowerment Award, for example. But these are all, I'd say, informal attempts, you know?
Yes.
It's women who support each other informally. Do you think there should be some institutional changes? Are there some legal changes required for women worldwide?
I think that a couple of things that I would be against. Quota. I think that's very dangerous, whether it's in the world of arbitration or through legislation or in parliament or in companies. The idea of quota really hurts women because we can't tell anymore what is merit-based and what is not merit-based. That brings me to arbitrator appointments. They should be merit-based, not gender-based. If you're excellent, you're going to get appointed, whether you're a man or a woman. So I think those types of policy decisions can really backfire on women. When it comes to legislation, it really depends per jurisdiction. So I think most, let's say, UN states around the world have done a fantastic job. Does that mean that there's still work to do? Absolutely, absolutely. There's still legislation in certain jurisdictions where we need to do better. But that's also very complex because most states are based on democracy, checks and balances, parliamentary review, and a voter base. And in some countries, one is just not ready yet to go all the way. And that is fine, because what I would always like to emphasize is if you look where somebody like Carolyn Lamb, who's still extremely active and on the top of her game in the world of international arbitration, in her career, in that span, the progress that has been made, legislation, politics, international arbitration, is a very rapid uphill journey. And so we will get there organically, is my view. Now, when it comes to institutionalizing the women's movement, if you will, it's very nuanced. There is gender equality, there is equity, there is diversity, there is should everything be 50-50. So what exactly are we talking about when we want to institutionalize women empowerment? Is women empowerment allowing them to stay at home? Is women empowerment that some women actually really want to be mothers? And so we don't know. What I find very dangerous is that we rely on organizations, that we would rely on United Nations women, or we would rely on governments to pave the way for women. I think once you're in a certain position as a woman, you need to do your part. So I believe more in the organic process. Now, and I know I tend to sometimes say controversial things. So I have at some point said in another podcast interview that women and men are not the same. So I said at the end of the day, across the world, it's often the woman who is the primary caretaker. The woman is the mother who is in charge of the home and the children. And so she will have to juggle being in hearings and traveling and preparing cross-examinations while also be in charge of the children and the household. Now, one interviewer said to me, well, that is not true because everything is equal these days and the fathers also play their part. I said, well, maybe in the Netherlands, but then just leave the Netherlands and you'll find a whole different reality, also in the United States, for that matter. So we're not the same. We are very, very different. Also, many of us would want to be with our children. You know, newsflash, we actually want to be with our children. We are different. We are caring. We are nursing. We are empathetic. We lead in a different way. We are different with our teams. We are emotional. I cannot say that because I'm not supposed to say that we women are emotional. So apparently those are controversial statements. Now, when I say some women want to be at home with their children, I don't mean that in a derogative way. I mean, sometimes women will make the choice, I don't want to have a career, I'm going to be a full-time mother. My best friend from Amsterdam, up till quite recently, was a full-time mother. Her children are now older, so she started to work again, and I'm incredibly proud of her. But we could compare notes. We're the same age, we went to high school together. I would be working nonstop, she would be with the children. Her life was infinitely more challenging than mine. Infinitely more challenging. What she did, far more heroic than what I did. Going to work is so much easier. Going to work is so much easier. You're in control. And then you come home and it's just failure. And so I very much respect women who make the sacrifice. It is a sacrifice. And they are selfless. I'm pretty egotistical in that I want my career. So I think it has to be organic, because if we try to institutionalize and we do not diversity or empowerment, but this concept of equity, that women and men have to be the same, that actually means that women are expected to have full-time careers. And for a lot of women, that's not happiness. And so have been on the jury of United Nations Women with Aurora Heine Sheikh Sabika, the Global Women Empowerment Award, which is a phenomenal initiative. I've done a lot of work with UN Women through the Peace Institute in Sao Paulo. We've worked with the He for She. And just in the work that I do, we've done a lot of advocacy. I think UN Women is an incredible branch of the United Nations. There are other organizations, they need to keep up the good work, but we should not depend on them. We have our own role to play. This is very much what I believe in.
Thank you. I understand your point about not institutionalizing, equality, but I'd like to get back to arbitral appointments, if you allow me. According to the Cross-Institutional Task Force on Gender Diversity in Arbitral Appointments and Proceedings report, in 2021, women comprised 26.1% of arbitrators appointed.
Yeah.
The figure has nearly doubled from 12.6% in 2015. But we are far from equality here. And it's interesting that in younger arbitration institutions, such as the Russian Institute of Modern Arbitration, they had demonstrated, that in 2024, 35 of arbitrators in cases administered by it were women. Yeah. So younger institutions are doing better in this regard. What biases do you think are hindering, women, female arbitrators, from being appointed, and are there ways to improve it? Should we do something to improve it, or should it be completely organic?
Well, the reason why the Russian arbitration community is doing so well is you have a leader like Yulia. So she is a force of nature and incredibly impressive. The reason why Brazil is doing incredibly well is it has a leader like Eleonora Gayo, who is the queen of arbitration in Brazil and Latin America, a force of nature. And so those women lead the way. We now have Maxi Scheer, who is the president of the London Court of International Arbitration. I am very optimistic with her leadership. What has been done before by the LCA, the attempts and the efforts to put women on the map. There are leading arbitrators like Melanie van Leeuwen who show how strong female arbitrators can be. So I can come up with a ton of names of women who are just blow me away. Maxi is definitely the absolute superstar. Those are statistics. I don't know how those statistics, wow, tongue twister, were created. Steve Schwabel, who was the International Court of Justice, was with White & Case. And he said, when I graduated, women could just be secretaries. And he graduated with Sandra Day O'Connor, who ultimately became a justice on the Supreme Court of the United States of America. And he said, in my firm, it's majority female partners, Carolyn Lamb, Andrea, etc. And so he said that went very, very fast. So I do think the role women play in the world of international arbitration is getting more dominant and dominant and dominant. We see it in all the organizations, we see it in leadership with international arbitral institutions, and the appointments, there are really many, many, many women who get appointments. And so as long as there's mentorship, as long as other arbitrators give women a chance, so certain leading male arbitrators, when they are a co-arbitrator, should think about how can we appoint a woman as a chair. That is an extra effort, so it's important to do the advocacy that co-arbitrators together think about appointing a woman as the chair of the tribunal. Institutions play their role, but it's ultimately, we are still in a system of party-appointed arbitrators. So another role that has to be played is by the law firms, who need to make their own informal lists of arbitrators and having a lot of female arbitrators, and the clients. Because I remember when I was with my firm in the United States, we were helping client with an ICC arbitration, and the senior partner came with the list and was only men. And I said, well, let's add some women. And he said, Marike, the client is really not interested in this. We just want to find the best arbitrators, and we're not going to make this effort, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, no, we should. As lawyers, we should tell clients, listen, you could also think of this arbitrator. And so there are certain corporations who sometimes ask me, do you have names? I really think about, let me just give 5 names of only women. So not even give them a choice. So we as a community need to be more awake, and we need to be more intentional in making those informal suggestions. Again, that's not institutionalizing it. That's us as individuals, as part of community, thinking about women first. But we should only promote those women if it's merit-based. So what I would never do is give the name of a woman for a potential arbitrator appointment when I don't know for certain that she is excellent. That's not to say that women are not as good as men. It's just for men and women both. Some of them are not yet experienced enough. Some of them are better as counsel. So in the same breath, I would not suggest a male arbitrator if I would think that that man is not yet up to it. And so I will only recommend the women where I just know they're going to do an amazing job. And I've got a long list, so that's an easy job.
It's very nice to hear. Could we please go back a little to your personal career? What interests me is, how do you see in general your role and your place in international law?
I think that for me, and my friends who've been with me from when I was in my early 20s will now also laugh and fall off their chairs, because I don't see myself as a person in international law. That's probably still because of the background of the performing arts, which I continue to do, and I still do. I still dance, I still do art. It's still very much my life. And so I always feel like I'm a visitor in the world of international law. I'm not a partner at a law firm. I'm not an arbitrator. With Madeleine Albright there, it was just not possible. And I don't act as counsel. I chose a very odd career pathway. It's just completely like this and all over the place. So I still consider myself a bit of not an imposter. I don't like all the sort of labeling, a visitor, because I started in a traditional way, if you will, with Freshfields, continued traditionally with Albert Jahn, who has a counsel and arbitrator practice group, but then I very much kind of went off the beaten path. You know, it's, what is it, Robin, Red Riding Hood, or she has to avoid the bad wolf, and she has these breadcrumbs, and she has to stay on the path and does not do that. And I think I like to wear red dresses, as people by now know. I guess I have the red button disorder, in that I don't like to do the beaten path. I don't like to do what people tell me to do. I don't like to be in a structure. I don't like to be in a cage. I don't like to be told what to do. And so I want to do things differently. And when we moved to Miami, I went into academia. So I was with Miami Law, building the institute. I was still with the law firm, but we were building a practice group. And I still felt it wasn't exotic enough. So that's when I switched to Madeleine Albright's firm in Washington. And so that's not being an arbitrator or a counsel in international disputes. We were involved in international disputes, but from a different angle. From there, I now moved to government. So again, I'm not acting as counsel and I'm not acting as an arbitrator. So I am in the world of international law, but not in a traditional way. And I don't think I've ever really have been. Even when I was with Albert Jahn, I was setting up Young ICA. And yes, I was doing the council work. Of course I was doing the council work. But I was also very busy setting up Young ICA. I was busy building the ICA New York Convention roadshows. So I did these other massive projects. And so I like to create, and I like to disrupt, and I like to innovate. I like to build. That's what I do. I like to build the car, maybe not drive the car. That's where I see myself in the space of international law. I'm not sure anybody really cares where I am in the world of international law, but that's what let me say it this way, that's what I enjoy. I enjoy more being the architect than walking down the beaten path and being excellent counsel. Now, there are those who are fantastic arbitrators, and I've seen excellent counsel. Again, Melanie is one of them. I don't think I ever had that type of talent or grit to do cross-examinations the way I've seen others do it. So a big applaud to them, how they continue for decades to become so good at that craft. They really excel in that one beautiful craft that is being a counselor, arbitrator in international disputes, which is not me. I build. And so what I do now is, in 2023, I joined Team Bahrain. It's my home. Team Bahrain is my family. I'm incredibly happy. I love going to work. I love the women I work with, the women who work for me. They're just incredible superstars. They're rock stars. And we're building again. And that is exciting to me. Bahrain has all the potential in the world to be an innovator and to be a thought leader in the space of international disputes, and creating something on almost a blank canvas, and think about, after like 100 years of international arbitration, what is next, and then have the tools to build the what is next in Bahrain, for Bahrainis and by Bahrainis is something I'm very, very passionate about. So my work doesn't even feel like work.
This is really great to see, because for many people, job is one thing and hobby is another thing. Sometimes they suffer. They have to do one thing for money and another thing for pleasure. And looks like for you, it's both the same.
Yeah. You just said we're big children. My son sometimes I get I have a lot of fire in me, so I can get very passionate and, we have to do this, and then it almost seems like I am angry, but it's the passion, it's the temper, it's the good fire. And my son said, "Mommy, I just don't really think you like your job." And I said, "I love my job and I care." And I said, I get to do something that almost feels like school, in the sense that when you're young and you go to school and you're with your friends and you party afterwards and life is just all, no responsibilities. That's kind of what my life feels like in a way. So it almost feels again like going to high school, in that the people I work with feel like my high school friends, and we're doing this together. It's a team effort, and we're having fun. We're having loads of fun. Of course, I travel a lot, so I'm on the go a lot. But when I have the absolute fortune of being at home and going to the office, I have 2 offices. I'm with the Economic Development Board, and then of course I'm now Secretary General of the Council, so we have our premises with the BCR. And when I arrive, sometimes we're there, 7 hours, and time flies by, and I'm in meetings with my team, and we're having loads of fun. I hope they feel the same about that. Maybe they think, "Oh my God, it's been 7 hours, I want to go." For me, it feels like good fun, and it is a fantastic thing to be able to go to work in the morning and go home in the evening and just feel absolutely euphoric. And it really, truly doesn't feel like work. I get to do what I did when I studied. I loved, in a way, when I was a student, both at Leiden and Sciences Po in Paris, I enjoyed what I did. And when I publish my books, or when I teach, or when we create the way we do, it feels like being a student, but it's just real. And so my job is definitely, some people, like you say, they say, you don't live to work, you work to live. And I think that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous statement, because I have the luck, and I know not everybody does, but I have the pure luck that I get to have a job and a career pathway in international disputes that is a passion, that feels like it's a purpose. And so it doesn't feel like a job, because I got lucky. And in a way, I therefore do live to work. And with that, I mean, I have a very rigid lifestyle. So I'm one of those obnoxious people. I don't drink, and I don't smoke, and I don't do drugs, and I don't do medicine, and I do a lot of movement, and I eat very healthy, and I take extreme care of health, so that I have the energy and the immune system to work the way I do, and to travel the way I do, and to be up there with high energy. So I do live to work. But at the same time, sometimes I get quite worked up. The Marike fire comes out, and I get a bit combative, apparently. And I need that. And somebody asked, well, but that's toxic energy, that's negative energy, that's not good for your health. But Albert Jan taught me one thing. He said, Marike, when you get angry, only make sure you get professionally angry. And what he meant to say is, don't let it get to you personally, don't let it get to you emotionally. But sometimes you do have to get angry with an opposing counsel, of what an arbitrator did, or something politically, or whatever it is. The world is not like a Alice in Wonderland, everybody's with you type of world. You will have opponents, you will have setbacks, and that will get you, it shouldn't get you sad or afraid, it should get you angry. But it's the good passion, anger, fire that allows you to persevere and not give up. Now, I've had days when we really have to go to battle, but then I still go home, I'm happy. So they will see me with the fire coming out, thinking, whoa, she's fierce. But I'll go home, and I'll do my painting, and I'll go in the pool, and I'll do my dancing and my singing, and it's like it didn't happen. And that's one thing that is extremely important, is that you learn to tell yourself this is actually something that has nothing to do with you, the person. It's what you're doing, not who you are. And if it gets negative, or there's turmoil, or it's a battle, look at it that way. That's the thing, it's not you. Now, why do I say that? You can be as healthy as you want to be. But when you allow, and I really use the word allow, when you allow stress to get into your system, which means your cortisol will spike, which means your adrenal glands will kind of deplete, you will get sick and you will get a burnout. And I do see in my space, and I've been in there for 25 years, I've seen people go under physically and mentally. And you have to have the tools to cope. And so I, in fact, have a professional coach I work with. So I have a coach, she's in Canada, and we connect on a very regular basis. And she helps me develop tools so that it doesn't go in my system. And I think for younger people, that will be one of my most important elements of advice. Protect your health, because international disputes is not for the faint-hearted. This is a tough world that we're in, especially now. And so I found ways. So my ways is, again, the arts. So it's a lot of dance that I do. I'm going to go later to a ballet school this evening. It's paint. And just to give, since we're doing this for an audience of young women, I travel a lot, and travel is very draining on your system. And so, of course, you can eat healthy, and you can work out. A lot of the lawyers this week, thousands of lawyers have registered for this week. I was at an event this morning, and a lot of them are now exhausted, and they're not feeling too good anymore. And they're probably taking aspirins, and they're drinking coffee all day, wine at night. And I can see that, and I see it over and over and over again. So what I do is I travel with my ballet equipment wherever I go, and I travel with a sketchbook. So whenever I have a moment, or I'm on the plane or in the train, or I sketch. And that really, really helps. And you have to pace yourself. So another advice I would give is, when you're tired, don't try to sort of, push yourself through it. I can tell you now that will very much backfire. I definitely had a couple of burnouts in my career. When you feel that, you need to pace yourself. So you need to take a rest. So this week, as you know, has been very intense. Yesterday, I will tell it now on camera, I took a nap at some point. I think on Tuesday I might have taken a half-hour power nap during the day. And I had to give speeches, and it's been a very intense program for me. Yesterday, I had things in the morning, and I was double booked. I had to go to another event. I had to go do a photo shoot. I knew there was a long evening event. I had to go on conference calls, and I thought, oh my God, it's like sort of, I'm running out of gas. And so I went in between, I skipped one session, and I went to the pool. And so I do that, and most people won't do that. They say, I'll just soldier on, and then when I get home, I'll deal with it. Well, your body's going to say, no, that's not our plan. Our plan is that you're going to get sick before you get home. So always listen to the sort of the signals that your body's giving you.
Thank you for the advice and for your insights and for your sharing your healthy habits. I wanted to ask, being a visionary, a revolutionary in a sort of way, what is your position on using the artificial intelligence in work? Do you use it? What is your stance on it?
Well, so I'm old school. I travel around with a sketchbook. So I print my stuff. I'm horrible with technology. My team, and they will see this too, will now also fall off their chair laughing. I cannot do anything at all with technology. I would recommend people, the young ones, to read the book about Mark Zuckerberg, which is about Facebook, and it's called Zucked. It's unbelievably insightful. I tend to say technology is a useful servant but a very dangerous master. But technology is here to stay, and AI is not the future, it's the present. And it can help us as long as we control it. And so with Bahrain, with the BSTR, we signed an MOU with Jusmundi. That was the first MOU we signed since I took over. And I'm very proud. I know the leadership of Jusmundi very, very well. I'm in awe of what they're doing and how they're taking over the world. I think that the way they collect data, the way they connect the data, the way they allow users to search the data is incredibly powerful. And it's going to help us. It's going to help the system. It's going to be good. It's one of our key points of focus with what we're doing with Bahrain. We're focusing on neutral justice. We're focusing on cost and efficiency in arbitration. We're focusing on AI. So that is something we're going to do. For the second edition of my book, I'm going to work with Jusmundi. I think AI should be used. I think that with what I did with my book and the case law and the data on the drafting history, their tools can help. Now, across the board, whether it's AI for international disputes or anything else in the world, it's going very, very fast, and we are very suspicious. Will it take over the role of humans? Now, one thing that AI does not have is emotional intelligence. And so we people always have a role to play, and we should be the ones controlling AI in that it remains a servant, not a master. So I do believe in it, yes.
Thank you. It's been a long conversation. I suggest that we should move to the third part of it, and namely advice to the young people. The first one would be, how would you recommend students and young professionals gain what maybe is the most important in career? How do they gain professional contacts in the international arbitration?
So what's interesting, this morning I was attending an event, and a young student came up to me, or she's not a young student, she's a young person who works, I think, at the Russian Arbitration Center, but she came up to me asking questions about her PhD. So she had already decided that she was going to write a PhD, and 2, she had already sort of decided what she was going to write about, and then 3, she wanted to ask me for very specific topics. And I, in effect, said to her, don't write a PhD. And she was very, I think she was quite taken aback. I might have really ruined her day today. I said, I see students, they study, and then they do an LLM, and then they do another LLM, and then they do courses, and then they want to write a PhD, and then they want to do CRP, and then they want to do Hochschul's, and before you know it, they spend a decade of, collecting more degrees than a thermometer, and it will lead to nothing. And so I can tell you, whatever I learned in law school, it contributed, I think, 0 to my career. And so what Albert Jan tends to say is, roll up your sleeves and get your feet in the mud, which is maybe a Dutch expression. I get quite tired of young people wanting to get professional connections. And this is why. I think for senior people or well-established people or people who have power, so to speak, those people are often not interested in meeting younger people for that sense, for business development. They're focused on users, they're focused on corporations, they're focused on the governments, they're focused on the institutions that give appointments. That's what they're looking at. The senior leaders are not going to wake up and go to a conference and think, I'm going to spend all my time talking to the young ones. Now, I do that, but that's because I'm also the founder of Young ICA, and I care about these young people, and I attended the entire conference on Wednesday, not just my panel, And somebody came up to me and said, I find it really remarkable. You were a keynote speaker and you stayed for the entire day in the room listening to the others. And that I've never seen. I thought, well, because I want to support them. And I think it's very interesting. And I'm part of this group today. And I do make my time to really talk to younger people. One was giving out the badges, said, oh, I'm so happy to meet you. And so I took my time to talk to her. But most people just won't do that because they're extremely busy. And so I would say, don't study forever. Just get a job, get your feet in the mud, work, and don't think about what you want, which I've seen with some juniors who come up to me in sort of the office setting and say, well, this is what I want to do. I'm really interested in technology, and I want to like focus on something within the project that's like AI and technology. And I'm thinking, okay, I have about a list of 1,000 things that I need to execute on. I have a team. We're all trying to execute those 1,000 things, but let me now pivot into that you have used this as a hobby and you want to do AI. It doesn't work that way. You join a team as a junior and you need to become useful. You need to take things off the senior's plate. You need to solve problems. You need to get stuff done. So the moment a leader sees, hey, that's a person I can rely on, that's a person, whenever I send things to that person, he or she's going to do whatever it takes to get it done, guess what happens? I'm going to send more things to that person. I'm going to start relying on that person. I'm going to start looking at that person as somebody I can trust and I can, spar with. And then what's going to happen, I'm going to take that person with me when I travel. And I'm going to introduce that person to everybody. And when I cannot do a speaking slot, I will give it to that person. And then that person is on a podium. So instead of saying, let me go to a conference and introduce myself to everybody, well, most people will be like, okay, you're a very young person. I don't know what to do with you. I mean, this is not a charity organization, the world of international arbitration. So put the hours in. Put the hours in. Now, if you do feel I need to do networking, that's why we set up the Young ICA organization. There is the mentoring program, there is scholarship, we have training sessions. The training sessions come with networking sessions. And so that's the way to become part of this world. That's what I would recommend. Of course, go to the main conferences, but listen and learn. Don't walk around like I want to say hi to everybody, because then what kind of impression are you going to give? You're just a young person. And so in your office, become that reliable person for leadership, and then have some patience. This is the long game that we're in.
Thank you. Apart from actual job and engaging with networking and mentoring sessions and Young ICA and so on and so forth, should young people engage in other activities like contests, moot courts? Yeah. Is this useful from your point of view? What do you think?
Moot court has become massive. So Martin Hunter was really one of the godfathers, as was Thomas Walde, who I still remember. Yes, moot court is a whole universe in and of itself. A lot of professors, a lot of lawyers, a lot of law firms, a lot of institutions, a lot of countries have become involved in making sure that as many teams as possible can go to Vienna. I know that marriages come out of Vienna. It's a family that is Vienna. I remember with Miami, we trained a lot of our students. So there's the regional moots, and there's the moots in Miami, and then they go to Vienna. It's lots of fun also. It's like the model United Nations for arbitration, right? So, and by now it's become so famous. So this moot, 100%, try to participate. I would be in favor of that, yes.
Thank you. You've given a lot of great advice already. In the end, if you maybe have some more words for the youngsters, maybe you could address them directly and give some final advice.
I think, and again, I'm by no means a leading arbitrator or leading counsel. I do my thing and try to do it to the best of my abilities, and still packed with flaws and trying to grow every day. What I've learned with everything that happened in my life, which is not just my career, it's been a long journey that has been quite turbulent, is at the end of the day, you ask yourself the question, are you happy? And sometimes I think that a lot of young arbitration specialists do not ever ask themselves that question. They are so focused on the success. They're so focused on, I need to be a leading arbitrator. And I can tell you that might all come crumbling down. And was it that arbitrator appointment and that partnership at a firm that made you happy? Is that really who you are? I don't think so. And I think you need to wake up in the morning and ask, am I happy? Somebody asked me that question. I met him, and the first question he asked is, are you happy? And I was completely shocked, because we don't ask ourselves that question. So ask yourself why you do this. Are you becoming an arbitrator because of the money? Are you becoming an arbitrator because of the prestige, because it's now everybody wants to be an international arbitrator? Because if that's the reason, stop immediately. So ask yourself what you love about the craft that comes with being an arbitrator or counsel, and be honest, maybe that's not you. And that's fine, by the way. That is totally fine. So that's my first advice. My second is perspective. Family really matters. Whether that is your parents, or when you become a parent, your siblings, your friends, that's also family. At the end of the day, when you're going to look back at your life, and I've seen this with Martin Hunter and others who are very dear to me, that's what they will find important. So you need to have your family, which is also those friends and colleagues who become family. I say it's not Team Bahrain, but it's Family Bahrain. So I'm very happy when I wake up in the morning and I come home at night. The last point of advice that I really want to give, because I now see it just too often, is you need to take care of your health. And I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday who was talking about dieting. And then she said, when I travel, I just do whatever I do. Like, I eat what I want, I don't work out. And I said, I take care of my health, not for aesthetics, but for my health, so that I feel good every day and I don't get sick on the long term. And we have created a culture in international arbitration where traveling all the time, doing all-nighters, drinking coffee, drinking alcohol, being on the grind, burning the candles on both ends has become a badge of honor. And so what I now try to do, being the boss, is I sometimes tell my team, I'm very, very tired. I'm not going to come in the first half of the day. I've traveled too much. I've worked through the weekends. I need to take half a day to myself. I need to recalibrate. I need to decompress. I cannot come to the office. I'm too exhausted. I show that vulnerability so that they understand, okay, nobody is a robot. And they see that as an example, like, oh, she isn't immortal either, or like above the law. But they also then learn, when you are exhausted, you need to take a break. Don't wait taking your break when you take your vacation weeks from now. It's going to be too late. And that brings me to something that one of my colleagues at Albright said to me, which was genius. It's the self-care of the very gifted. And many politicians I've worked with for over the years, former heads of states, the Albright group, I still work with quite powerful diplomats and politicians in Latin America, leading arbitrators, the head legal counsel at big corporations. They are brilliant. They are so smart. They have such a high IQ. They are just these shiny stars, right? And they don't know how to take care of themselves. And that is remarkable, that they are so smart and yet don't understand that they should take care of themselves. And the phrase is the self-care of the very gifted. And I think in the world of international disputes, that's a narrative we need to change. We need to change that culture of, we're always traveling, we're always on the go, we're always doing all-nighters. This whole week, I hear people say, I've traveled here, I've traveled there, I've done this, I've done that. We slept 2 hours, da-da-da, it's so cool. No, it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. And that's bad for women, because we also have to take care of our children. Well, my son is older, and I'm not doing the homework with him right now, so I cannot take credit for that. But when Sammy was younger, we also have to take care of our children. And women, and I can say it now on camera, which is highly controversial, our hormones are different. We are not physically the same. And we suffer through early hormones, and then motherhood, and then postpartum, and then there is perimenopause, and then there's menopause. It just does not end until we're 75. So we struggle with this as well. And I remember one professor, and then of course I will conclude because I talk too much. During COVID, I'm not sure if you remember that time, it went all into virtual. People thought that was great. I remember I slept 3 hours a night for a good year because I was still working with Madeleine Albright, and so we would have the US time zone working from 3 p.m. till about 1 a.m. But then in the morning I had to get up to do homeschooling with my son. And so I would work until 1 a.m., 2 a.m., just sort of crash onto a bed. Since we were just in a lockdown, so you couldn't leave the house, you didn't have to like get dressed or anything. And I would literally wake up in the morning, just put on a bathrobe and go do homeschooling with my child. Over time, I just turned into a zombie. And then you think, oh my God, and there's COVID out there, and my immune system has completely crashed. I called the school. He was at a different school back then. Now he's in a phenomenal school. And I said, you have to stop this. I'm a working mom. I can't do this anymore. And then there was a professor at Miami Law, and I'm still with Miami Law. Bless her heart, she sent an email to the entire faculty, and she said, I am a single mom. My daughter is of this age. Let me tell you, this is what my schedule looks like for law school. This is everything that you want me to do. And then this is what I have to do for my daughter in homeschooling. And then she said, I cannot afford to get COVID. I cannot afford to crash because I need to take care of my daughter. And you need to help me here. So there were cries for help. And she was courageous, going out there and saying, I need help. And so I think we need to stop pretending that we can do it all. So when certain leading female politicians say you have to lean in, like Sheryl Sandberg, because we can do it all, guess what? We absolutely cannot. We will crash. And I had somebody even in my team who said, listen, I can never break. In the office I have to do this, at home I have to do this. I want to be there to say, you should allow yourself to break here and there, and you should allow yourself to say, I don't got this right now. So the self-care of the very gifted and the right for women to say, I need help, needs to be embraced by, I think, the Society of International Arbitration, and we need to change that culture. I think that would be my final remark for all of us to get some sleep.
Thank you very much. I hope the international arbitration community hears you and keeps it in mind, making decisions later. Thank you for the fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
It was very interesting, very insightful. I hope you enjoyed your time too.
Very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you for coming to our interview, and good luck.
Thank you, and good luck to you. Thank you.